I'm judging myself, but I did not fully even understand what my spirit longed for. Welcome to Outside of Eating the podcast. I am Brianna, your host. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you are new here, be sure to subscribe to the channel so that you can be updated when I post new content. Okay. So this episode is one that is very special to me because I have honestly feel like I've gone through like a spiritual, I've unlocked a spiritual dimension in my life. Okay. And so this is going to be a very powerful episode. And I want you to share with others, share with people that you love, your friends, so that they can also be invited into the conversation, and they can also be joined into what we're doing here on Outside of Eden. So these past couple of weeks on this podcast, I stay true to being transparent with you guys because I feel like that's important for me to be transparent. And one of the things that have been happening to me for a while was this loss of zeal for God, the loss of zeal for my spiritual disciplines, just like waking up and doing my devotional, praying, and all the things that are important to keep me near and dear to God, right? To keep me flowing from the river of God. And so I'm losing my zeal. I'm literally praying and asking God to renew my zeal. Show me how to have fun with reading scripture. Show me how to have fun with my devotional so that it's something that I desire naturally, and it's something that I want to seek and excited to wake up and be in communion with God, right? And be steadfast in my spiritual disciplines. Like I'm literally praying and asking God to put that desire in my heart, renew my zeal, right? And it wasn't happening for a while. And I didn't completely understand it because I'm like, I'm praying. I don't know what else to do. I can't make myself want to be spiritually disciplined, right? And I don't want to be one that is spiritually lazy or spiritually idle, right? I'm always trying to grow in the Lord and be close to him and in it. And I don't like the feeling of not feeling close to God. And so for me, I had a conversation with a new coach that I am seeing, and she was just talking to me about why I wanted to do coaching. And I told her that I wanted a worthiness coach, right? Someone that could coach me into a different like state of mind, who can help me to rid of the old and in with the new, right? And can keep me accountable with that, right? Because coaches can be like an accountability partner. And so I started to talk to her, and I'm like, I feel like I procrastinate reading my Bible. I feel like I procrastinate in just doing my devotional. I'll start cleaning up the house knowing that I should have done devotional, then cleaning the house. I'll start doing any and everything to justify, to prolong, or to kind of just like put off doing the things that I know that I need to do as far as my spiritual disciplines are concerned. And it's mostly in this reading of my Bible, right? And so I'm just like, I don't know what's wrong with me. Like I'm trying my best, da 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 da. And she's like, well, first of all, let's erase this mindset that you're a procrastinator, right? Because when we add this idea that we are procrastinating or we are procrastinators, we create this false identity in association to ourselves that we're procrastinators. And so then we'll start living, if our belief is that we are procrastinators, we will act as procrastinators. We will act out of the things that we believe, right? And so she was like, let's change our frame of mind to, I'm having a little bit of resistance when it comes to studying and reading my Bible. And I liked that thought process, right? Because resistance is basically just like this extra current, it's this opposition that is almost like you're resisting the process for some odd reason. And I realized that when it comes to this resistance, especially when it comes to our spiritual disciplines, a lot of the times we resist reading the Bible because we have some type of distorted association with the Bible, right? Like maybe we read the Bible and we think that it's going to be boring. Maybe we read the Bible and we think that I don't understand anything. So why even read it if I don't even understand what it's saying? Or if we any time we have these associations where we think that other people's understanding of the Bible is better than our understanding of the Bible, and that the understanding that God gives us isn't enough, it can almost prevent you from reading the Bible because you don't believe that God can give you the same manna and the same understanding that he gives someone else, and that your timing and your understanding and the things that he is revealing to you in these moments of your life is not enough. But everything that he is revealing to you is for you, and even his timing and what he's revealing to you, his timing and what he's revealing to you, all of that he is sovereign over. So whatever it is that he is giving you an understanding, we have to be content with what we see. And I heard Jackie say this, we have to be content with what we see. Going back to like what my therapist was saying about this idea of resistance, it lets me know that I was medicating the wrong thing. I was thinking that I was a procrastinator. And so, therefore, I'm like forcing myself to be spiritually disciplined and not understanding why I couldn't be consistent. I'm literally forcing myself to be spiritually disciplined and not to be spiritually lazy, and not understanding why this desire is not natural for me, and not understanding why I could not be consistent with certain devotionals. I have one that has you sit in silence for a little bit, and then you read the devotional, you say a prayer, and then you sit in silence again. And I'm like, not understanding why I could not be consistent with that devotional, right? And it's crazy to me when all of this just came full circle. God was answering my prayer of wanting to be renewed in my zeal. And he was doing this all in these different ways. God is a creator, right? He's many things, but one thing he is a creator. He created human beings and we all look so different. I have the curly hair that shrinks like crazy. I have brown tone skin. You have people who are lighter tone skin, and you have people who have straight hair and wavy hair. God is creating us all so differently. Our personalities are so different. Our cadence, the way that we speak is so different. Then you have animals. Even animals have distinctions to them. Zebras have these stripes, and tigers have these spots, and lions have this big hair in the front. There is these wonders and these awes of God that shows that he is a creative. He is creative. We get to see the real life of God creating us in his image. We literally get to see that be lived out when people live in their creativity, right? And so what I'm saying is, I'm saying all of this to say that God used Pastor Dharius, my pastor. Thank God for him. He used Pastor Dharius to help me realize. Pastor Dharius literally said that a lot of us are not consistent in our spiritual disciplines because we don't know our spiritual temperament. The thing that really helps you to feel connected to God, right? And so I'm like, oh my goodness. And it's funny because Pastor Dharius has mentioned spiritual temperament before, but it didn't click until after I had been praying for understanding and zeal and desire. And God brought it back full circle. So when we go into James 4:6, it says, but he gives more grace. Therefore, it says, God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Submit yourselves, therefore, to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. right? So, like, I do believe that the enemy wants to attack us in the area of spiritual disciplines because he knows how vital it is for us to be spiritually disciplined. Being spiritually disciplined and being near to God, which is what our spiritual disciplines are doing, it is keeping us near to God. Prayer is keeping us near to God. Studying our Bible is keeping us near to God. Serving is keeping us near to God. Being near and dear to God is what gives us our strength. It gives us the strength to be kind. It gives us the strength to be faithful. It gives us the strength to be committed. It gives us the strength to be motivated, to be of good courage. It gives us the strength to literally be sober-minded, be free of judgment, free of fear, free of negativity. It literally gives us the strength to fight. This is how I fight my battle. This is how I fight my battle. And that is exactly how you fight your battle, by coming near and dear to God, right? So our spiritual temperaments can be very different. I learned that I am most connected to God in nature. My spirit knew this already. In the spirit, I already knew this, right? But for me to come to the natural understanding, to the brain understanding that this is how I connect to God, I had to hear Pastor Dharius talk about the importance of spiritual temperament, and in that helping us be consistent in our worship and connection to God. Everybody's spiritual temperament may be so different. So for me, when I am near water and I am near fire and I am near trees and grass and flowers, this is when I am literally feeling like God is speaking to me. He's speaking to me through the butterflies, and he's speaking to me through the wind, and he's speaking to me through the waves of the water, and he's speaking to me through the ants. He's speaking to me through the dogs that want to bark at everything that it sees when it walks past it. He's speaking to me through the clouds as they move through the sky and they position themselves to create pictures in the sky. He's speaking to me in this way. And so this is when I feel most connected to God. And it never made sense, and it didn't click until there were times where I would read my Bible at the beach and read my Bible at the park, and I would literally endure in my time with God, and I'd feel like that's when he spoke to me. But I think it didn't click to me. It didn't click to me that when I tried to read my Bible in the bed, that I didn't feel as connected to God. You see what I'm saying? Everybody's spiritual temperament is so different. You have Abraham who built altars, and that's how he felt connected to God. David was a poet, and he wrote songs. His son Solomon, there's literally a chapter in the Bible, Songs of Solomon, where these are the ways that they feel close to God. There are some people who feel connected to God in the creative, through art, through music. They feel connected to God. Some people need to hear music in the background as they pray, and this is how they feel connected to God. Some people have to be in the posture of sitting. Some people like to walk and talk to God. Hannah stood and she prayed to God, right? Thank the Lord for my grandmother, because she brought me a prayer journal, and I love you if you're watching this. She bought me a prayer journal, and I didn't know until she had purchased that for me and I started to use it that I feel connected to God when I write my prayers. I have a very hyperactive brain. I'm ADHD, whatever. So I tend to, when I say my prayers in my head, I tend to veer off in thought, and it's just, I don't really feel connected to God because I feel more all over the place. When I write my prayers to God, this is when I feel most connected to him. I feel like I can think in clarity, and I can literally be in the moment and be present with God. So when you think about David and you think of Psalms 23, one of the most famous Psalms, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He make me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me through paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thy is with me. Thy rod, thy staff, thy comfort me, that prepares a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thy anoint my head with oil, my cup run over. This song in this poem made him feel connected to God. That was his way of worshiping and feeling connected to God. I feel like a lot of the times we judge ourselves, like how I was judging myself as to why I didn't have desire and I didn't have zeal. I'm judging myself, but I did not fully even understand what my spirit longed for. And my spirit longed for being in nature and being with God in that way. And everyone's way in which they connect to God is so different. You could be a contemplative where you ponder and you reflect. And you need silence so that you can introspect and you can be present with God. And then you have these other ways of connecting with God. People who are intellects, they feel connected to God when they get to study theology and they get to read books and they get to really just study tradition and history and church history. And this is how they feel connected to God. So I wanted to quickly get into this story of specifically Moses. There's so many people that found different ways in which they connected to God. I mean, Jesus going into the wilderness, right? And him needing to be in solitude and people not really understanding that was the way that he connected to God. He needed to be away from the crowds in solitude, right? And so everyone is just so different. Some people feel more connected to God when they're at church, when they're in group worship, when they're in the body, when they're connected with other people, when they're celebrating life with other people. I mean, everyone is just so very different. So I encourage you to look up spiritual temperament so that you can learn the different ones. And then that way you can start paying attention to when you feel most connected to God, because this is going to help us be more consistent in our spiritual disciplines, knowing our spiritual temperament. Because the closer that we feel to God, the better we're going to be, right? So I have to know, what makes me feel close to God? Is it serving and loving on others that makes me feel closer to God? So this excites me. This particular scripture excites me because, like I mentioned earlier, I feel close to God when I am in nature, right? And so when you go to Exodus 3:1, it says, now Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, and he led his flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. He looked, and behold, the bush was burning, yet it was not consumed. And Moses said, I will turn aside to see this great sight, why the bush is not burned. When the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses. You see Moses going to a mountain of God and experiencing the angel of the Lord through a burning bush, through a fire. And you see that he's in awe, like, whoa, this is not even being consumed. What is this? What is this awe and this wonder of God? His curiosity of the awe and the wonders of the nature of God allowed him to be connected to God. And in his curiosity is when the Lord called to him and said, Moses, Moses. And this was the way that Moses connected to God. And you'd see throughout scripture that often Moses went up into the mountain to connect with God. He connected to God most best in the nature of God, in the awe of God. I am still learning about the different spiritual temperaments. I do believe that everyone can have more than one. You may just have one way that you feel most connected to God, but typically you have more than one way that helps you feel like you can hear the voice of God. You can be in communion with God. You can really worship God in spirit and truth, right? Because that's what worship is, worshiping God in spirit and truth. And so God is not particular in the way in which we worship him. He simply asks that we worship him in spirit and truth. So the last thing I want to point out is just this funny story of this guy that I was dating, and I dated him for such a short period of time. But he was telling me how when he moved here to the city, he had visited this church, and the church did not use music when they worshiped God. And he said that felt weird to him. And so he began to resist going to that church. Like he just stopped going. He could not be planted in that church because the way that they worship God, he didn't feel connected to. So I'm not sure what he experienced. Maybe they just spoke words or hymns or sounds. They could have done a little humming, right? And so, but he did not feel connected. And so therefore there was resistance. He didn't go back, right? He was inconsistent. After that, he didn't even want to try any other churches in the city. He didn't go back. It was just like he had just given up on his connecting to God. And it's funny enough, like thinking back on that conversation that we had, it almost confirms what God was trying to communicate to me about why I was having so much resistance with my spiritual disciplines, right? I wasn't leaning into my spiritual temperament. He needed something as small as that may sound to him. Having music in the background was important for him to feel connected to God. And this is why he had resistance in going back to that church and he didn't return, right? So knowing our spiritual temperament, I do believe is going to help us in being more consistent in our spiritual disciplines. And it's going to help us grow closer to God, right? And so I want you to be encouraged to learn what helps you feel connected to God, whether that's speaking your prayers out loud, saying them in your head, writing them down, singing to God, creating music for God, whatever makes you feel connected to him. But knowing your spiritual temperament, I do believe is going to help us not to judge others in the way that they feel connected to God, but also to embrace our own, right? And also, don't feel the need to compare the way that you connect to God with the way that other people connect to God, right? Because that's going to prevent you from having your own personal experience with him, right? He created us all so differently. We're all so different. That's what's so crazy. Like we're all so different in our personalities, in the way that we dress, in the way that we look. And so how do we not believe that if God created us so differently in our images, in our personalities, in our cadence, in the way that we speak, even our fingerprints are all different, that we also could not connect to God in a different way from another person? We're so different, you know? So I pray that your week is blessed and that you are feeling even better about just being more disciplined. Give yourself grace when it comes to being disciplined and when it comes to your experience with God and what God is revealing you and the understanding that God is giving you. And so, you know, when you think, oh, Pastor Dharius was saying this, when you think, oh, well, why didn't I know this sooner? Why am I just now learning this? Or why is God just now revealing this to me? God is sovereign, right? So he may have thought that if he would have told you the importance of your spiritual temperament 30 days ago, maybe it wouldn't have clicked, right? Because I told you guys how like Pastor Dharius has mentioned spiritual temperament before. And it's just now making sense to me because I'm in a position now where I can receive it. So yes, God is positioning you and he is giving you new understanding and he loves you so much. So that is all for this episode. And I will see you in the next episode of Outside of Eden.